My name is Drew Waldron, and I am on with space exploration engineer and TED speaker Nagin Cox. Nagin, it's great to sit down with you.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here today and have this conversation.
Space exploration engineer is an incredible job title, but for all of us outside of the STEM world, what does that entail?
So, space exploration engineer covers a lot of different areas. I've been fortunate enough to have a career in the aerospace industry that covers civilian space, commercial space, military space, and all of those areas have as a focus space exploration, whether it's using space to learn about our own planet with climate change and earth science, or whether it's really looking outward into our solar system. So, space exploration engineer covers all the different parts of my career that have involved my childhood passion of seeing what's out there, of exploring space. And we can talk more about what that means for individual roles as we go forward here.
You mentioned your childhood passion. What was it that initially led you on the path to working for NASA?
I think everyone has a different journey, and mine was not what many of my colleagues were, of how they got to NASA or to other aerospace entities like SpaceX. For me, I learned at a very young age that we find ways to divide ourselves. I grew up in a household where culturally there was an expectation that boys and girls would do different things. I'm originally from India. My parents were born there. I have a Muslim upbringing. And so often there's a sense that this is what the boys will do and this is what the girls will do. And of course, I didn't understand that at all. I was like, why does it make a difference whether I'm a boy or a girl? And so when I saw the challenges, the conflicts that created, because that meant right away, my mother was very supportive. My father, had some definite ideas. And so we started to have a conflict early on because of this. So that made me think, I would like to do something that brings people together instead of separates them. And at the time that I was growing up were the late Apollo missions and the early space shuttle missions. And at that time, pre-internet and all of that, people would watch the launches together and read the newspapers and talk about it. And so I gradually realized that space was something that the whole world would do. Even now, when we talk about landing on the moon, I was speaking in Mexico for one of the anniversaries of the moon landing. And people didn't say Americans landed on the moon. They said we landed on the moon. So that was, as a child, the reason that I decided I wanted to work in space exploration. At the time, Star Trek was on and Star Wars, and that opened my mind to the possibilities of looking outward. And so then, how kids are as a teenager, I was very melodramatic. I wanted to do something that benefited the whole world, not just my city or even my country, but something that benefited the whole world. The last piece of this is a few years later, as I was thinking through this, Carl Sagan's Cosmos television series came on, the original Cosmos, every Sunday night, and it would show these amazing space exploration stories. And that's where I first learned about robotic space exploration. I am not an astronaut, and I actually never wanted to be, because what I learned was before we send people, we send robotic spacecraft. And there were these incredible images coming out of a magical place called NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, that showed these worlds that we've never seen before. So when I was 14, I decided I wanted to work at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, and that's actually where I work today. So I've
And
been very lucky.
And the rest is history.
The
That's
rest is history.
incredible. Speaking of robotics and your career at the Jet Propulsion Labs, the coolest fact about your career, in my opinion, is the fact that you were in mission control when several of the Mars rovers first touched down on the Red Planet. What did it feel like to be part of such an achievement firsthand?
Those are some of the most memorable moments of my life, of my professional life. And at the time, when I decided I wanted to work in space exploration and robotic space exploration, I knew what that kind of meant. And I knew that I needed to be an engineer. At least I thought I did, that you had to be a scientist or an engineer. And so that was what I had in my mind is, oh, okay, I'll go and be a part of this exploration. What I didn't realize is working on these missions would mean working with a group of people for a long time to accomplish something hard with a deadline. And landing nights on Mars, landing days on Mars is the epitome of that. You've been working together with a group of people on something that often fails. And here's the moment. So we're in mission control, like you might see in the movie Apollo 13, only we're not talking to an astronaut. We're communicating with our robots. And it takes 7 minutes from the top of the Martian atmosphere to landing. And CNN calls those the 7 minutes of terror, because you're just waiting and hoping that everything went right in this autonomous sequence of events that happens on Mars. Because we're not joysticking the rovers, they're too far away. The time it can take a signal to get from the Earth to Mars can be anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes one way. So you can't joystick the rover. We send it a series of commands and then it carries those out. So on landing night, everything is pre-programmed and we are there to respond as soon as we knew how things went on Mars. But while it's clocking out on Mars, we are just waiting. You can do everything right and still have a rough day on Mars. So those moments, it wouldn't have mattered whether there were cameras in the room. It just didn't matter. We knew the whole world was watching, but we were sharing this moment, this bond of were we going to succeed or were we not? And it is an incredible feeling to be a part of a group that is doing that, whether or not you succeed. I've been fortunate, all four of the rovers that I've worked on, Spirit, Opportunity, Perseverance, Curiosity, and Perseverance, have all had successful landings. And as much as we said we're going to sit in our seats and be professional when we land, it always happens. We jump up and start yelling and screaming and hugging each other, and memories of a lifetime, truly the highlights.
That sounds like such an incredible experience. I was trying to figure out a way to verbalize the complexity of the situation, but I don't think that I could do a better job than you just did. Now, Nagin, when you're working with a team in a situation that tense and complex, what advice do you have for others that are leading a team undertaking an unbelievably difficult task?
One of the things that is an amazing coincidence in life is the day that we name our rovers and our helicopters and our various spacecraft. And the way we name them is we have essay contests, and any student from kindergarten to high school, sometimes worldwide, often it's just in the United States, can submit an essay. And we selected the winning essay. I've been part of the judging in the past, but in this case, the day that the name of the latest rover was announced was also one of the last days the team was together before the pandemic.
Mm.
And the name of the rover was Perseverance. And little did we know, no joke, that 2 days later, the world was going to shut down and that our name would come to mean so much more We think of perseverance as something that is a part of all earthly life, and it is. And at that point, one of the first things we had to decide was were we going to do it anyway? We were supposed to launch in July of 2020, and this planet shut down in March of 2020. Some of our fellow space agencies decided to persevere and try to launch because you launch to Mars every 2 years. That's when the Earth and Mars are at their closest point. So were we going to wait 2 more years, or were we going to try to do it anyway, to find a way? Engineering is about problem solving. And this was brand new territory. So, like anything else, teams that are doing something incredibly complex, or even teams that are doing something that is an addition to what they've done before, or is a bit more manageable, the process is the same. Get together, think about the problem, and then just start one step at a time. You just begin and you say you're going to keep solving problems one step at a time. And that's what we did. But the together part is key. Very few of the problems facing the world today are solved by one person sitting alone in their cubicle or in their office and thinking. It's groups of people coming together, sharing their skills, and saying, how are we going to tackle this problem, even if it's something as brand new as trying to launch to Mars in a pandemic.
Going farther together. Nagin, I want to get away from talking about Perseverance, the rover, and talk about Perseverance, the concept. Working at NASA, you've spent an immense amount of time working on those singular problems, problems that the average person outside of NASA might deem completely impossible. On a personal level, what has your career and personal life taught you about perseverance?
Perseverance is something that I feel like has been a part of my entire life. I started out, fortunately, with my mother supporting me in this desire to work in space exploration. But it's always hard when one of your parents is not so jazzed about it. And so I had to persevere. And I knew that at the time, I thought that NASA was made up mainly of scientists and engineers. And so getting a science degree, getting a STEM degree for me was hard. Math and science, I was decent at it in high school, but it did not come to me naturally. But I knew I wanted to work in space exploration. I knew I wanted this job at JPL eventually. So I had to work really hard to get through an engineering degree. Having an engineering background is one of the most versatile things you can do, because then you can literally go anywhere from there. But for me, it was a challenge to work through how hard a science or engineering degree can be. And then I didn't have the means to go to college because the financial resources for that in my family were devoted to the boys. So I needed to find a way to get to Cornell University, which is where I wanted to go to school for engineering. And I also have a degree in psychology. And I was fortunate enough to get a chance to compete for an Air Force scholarship. And finding a pathway to that, the military and experience in the military is what allowed me to get an education and then get the background. I loved serving in the Air Force, duty honor country, go Air Force. And that gave me the background to then work at JPL. I've now been at JPL working on multiple missions for many years, and it continues to be a find a way to contribute. Every team needs different skills. On a personal level, very recently, I contracted Bell's palsy, and Bell's palsy is a temporary facial paralysis of part of your face. And most people recover inside of 1 year, and I'm in that year. And I thought, all right, this is a new problem. How do I teach my face how to be a face again? And it's the same concept. Do it anyway. Persevere. Find a way to work through whatever is your latest challenge. And so many of us are not, the perfect candidates for what we want to do. If we want to write a book, if we want to be an actress, if we want an actor, if you want to go into medicine, you may think, I don't have the exact qualifications. But I got to tell you, do it anyway. Do it anyway if that's what you feel passionate about. If that's what makes you feel like you're doing something with your life. It doesn't have to be perfect. Do it anyway.
Do it